Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. I'm your host, Dave Kocharhook. This evening, we're going to be speaking with Cindy Light, and Cindy is here to talk to us about what I think is going to be a very interesting and quite informative topic. Recently, as you're well aware, the 2008 Summer Olympic Games were held in Beijing, China. And there's been a lot of heightened awareness here in the United States, and especially here in Silicon Valley, with the idea of this massive country and what does it take to actually do business there in China. We have a tremendous entrepreneurial spirit here in our part of the country, and a lot of people that I have talked to have wondered what they can do about engaging and doing business over in the Far East. So Cindy is someone who's going to be able to talk to us about that. And Cindy, welcome to Reference Point. Pleasure to have you here this evening, and thank you for coming down from Sausalito to join us.
Thank you. I'm very honored.
We're going to talk about a number of different things today. As a matter of fact, I think we'll probably end up doing 2 segments of this show because there's so much to cover. But what I wanted to just identify first is some of the things about your background that are quite, I think, fascinating and unique, because you really had the opportunity to bridge 2 cultures, and you've studied in, worked in, held important positions in both Chinese and American businesses, and which gives you a unique perspective on what it's all about for a Chinese to do business in America and for an American to do business in China. Is that a fair statement?
Sure, I think so.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of that background. Now, you went to Beijing University, or a graduate of Beijing University.
Yes.
And you then were a professor at another one of the colleges.
Hangzhou Business University.
Hangzhou Business University.
It's by Shanghai.
Okay. And so you were there and you were teaching, was it marketing?
At the beginning, I was teaching philosophy because I graduated from philosophy department. But pretty soon, and everything's supposed to blend in with business because I was teaching in business school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was in 1984 when I was teacher. I don't look like that old, I know. I was a very young professor there. Then I'll create more classes. For example, I was the first one to start a PR in business. That class in school, no one ever did before. It was students just loved it so much. And other classes, it blend in between philosophy, your idea, and how to put your idea into the business.
So this was a business school, or at least the focus of the university was to teach up-and-coming business professionals about how to engage in that an area, but they had no public relations type courses at that time?
No, because in 1980s, China just started open, and we actually were the top 10 business school in China, but everything was still very new at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So China started open in 1980s. Business school did not have the system as the Western world has. So basically, many business courses, they teach by book.
Oh, okay. So it's just here it is, and you study the book, and hopefully you learn something, but there wasn't any practical experience.
Not in 1984.
Okay, but things have progressed a lot since then.
Absolutely.
Now, you were teaching in the business school for a while, and then you actually started working for several larger corporations, some of the large corporations in China, I guess, and you were in one that was in the beer business, if I remember correctly. But that was in a city that was one of the early special economic zones, is that correct?
Yeah, okay, here's the thing. In 1980s, China started, if you look at this map, Chinese government picked 2 cities. One is Shenzhen, another is Zhuhai, which is right here by Hong Kong and Macau. Those 2 cities were little fishing towns at that time. Chinese government gave enough freedom to want to give a test, just to say if free market way will work in China, give no money but freedom. So at that time I was in east part of China here, that was called, I was called university's teacher over there. 1986, I was voted by 3,000 students as the teacher of the year. Then I thought about it, wait a minute, you know, we have 300 teachers in school and none of us ever sold anything, but we were teaching students how to do business. So I decided I'm going to try, see if what I teaching here, even although I was a teacher of the year, but what I teaching here actually worked there. Those two places, the only place you can really try the free market, but it's very hard to get job there. I was lucky.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what I'm understanding you to say is that the teaching that was being done was progressive. Okay, you were doing things that hadn't been done before, but it was still theoretical. You hadn't had the opportunity to actually try to put some of these concepts into practice in the real world.
Exactly.
And by the government opening up these 2 special economic zones, it gave you the opportunity to do that.
Yes.
Great. So you managed to find a position there with a large company, and you were doing very well and very successfully, and started doing some aggressive marketing, as I remember, to help them expand. I think you told me they were a company that had a tremendous regional following, but not really a national following, and you helped them expand their business nationally. Is that correct?
Yeah, I sold the beer in north part of China. Here, if you would look at it, here will be the Yangtze River and Yellow River start from this part and go over there. So we were in southern part of China, which is very close to Macau right here. You know, Cantonese people at that time, they didn't have much interest to go to northern part of China. The northern part of China speak Mandarin, and in this part of the country, people speak Cantonese. And in the southern part of China, the life was so much more easier than northern part of China. It's just not so developed. So the beer company had a good product, but they were doing business really good in their own area. None of them seems like care about sell the beer in northern part of China, and I was the first one actually start to sell beer, promoting beer, and right after I started work for this beer company, that was 1988. From the first day I started the PR department. They didn't have one, and so the marketing and the PR department, which is one department. And in next 3 months, I had non-stop traveled from city to city along here, this part, and also here. It's the north part of Yellow River. So we actually sold the beer in 15 cities.
So you were able to put your concepts that you had been teaching to practical use in this company, and it proved to be very successful, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. So now after that then, you were telling me that you had the opportunity to actually work for the government there in, you have to help me say the city again. It was
Zhuhai.
Zhuhai, which was one of the special economic zones at that time. And you were involved with the team of people that were interviewing prospective companies who wanted to come to China and take advantage of the special economic zones and start business activities there in China. Is that the way that was?
Yes, when it started, it's because 1989 Tiananmen Square, the event, Tiananmen Square happened. Then the entire West world decided they're not going to buy product from China. But guess what? This Zhuhai and Shenzhen just started. They're making money because they're doing import and export business. Because nobody buy product from China at that time, the entire export business died. So our mayor actually thinking about what is the way to attract a foreign business, international money goes to his city, because if they're not going to make it, if he couldn't make it work, and he couldn't see the future of the city, and of course those two cities, it was just a tasting at that time. So he come up with the idea is, okay, here I give you a little bit of background. It's before 1990, any business, for example, you from America, you want to set up a business in Zhuhai City. You come to here and you have to pass to about 26 to 30 departments.
30 different departments?
They're not in one location. They don't necessarily talk to each other in the same week or the same month.
Oh,
so
great.
you have to pass all those to get your project approved. So probably it's going to take you a long time to even know if that's going to be okay or not okay. So can you see it's very difficult?
Oh, yeah, it would be ridiculously difficult.
Yeah.
26 to 30 different departments, different people to talk to,
yes,
who weren't speaking to each other, so you have to make your presentation 25 to 30 separate times.
That's exactly
and convince
what,
each one of them that this is a good idea.
Yeah, that's exactly what you have to do by at that time. By then our mayor started having this idea, and he said, what if we put other people in one building? So we're going to have every week we're going to have a twice meeting to together all the documents. If some project it's okay in our city, and we can give them an answer in 1 week. So he made the promise, we're going to give them an answer in 1 week, yes or no. And within 2 weeks, they're going to have 4 times a meeting in 2 weeks. All the people will be together. So, and it's not going to take that long.
Sure.
The purpose is attract the money go to in China, even although they're not going to buy Chinese product anymore. Of course, all those departments from 26 or 30 departments, but he needs somebody in the center. So he handpicked about 8 to 10 people young people from different, how he find us, so I don't know. I was in beer company, and he just called my boss and said, we need so-and-so, we need Cindy Lai to come over here, work in the center. So from that day, I started work for government as investment policy consultant.
Investment policy consultant.
Yes.
Okay, and you did that for how long?
I did that for almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years. Okay, so as an investment policy consultant, you were interacting with companies from other countries or representatives from other countries.
Yes, only from another country.
Who were looking to potentially establish some business activities in your city.
Yes.
What kind of parameters did you have to decide to determine whether it was a reasonable fit or not reasonable fit for your city?
Okay, the government have a very clear policy. It's very, very clear. Like, for example, how much money, it's a starting point. At that time, it's about, let's see, right now, I have to think about Chinese number, 100,000 Chinese dollars, you can start a business there. So that's the money point. Of course, at that time, Chinese dollars probably it's 10 times than American dollars. That's just about how you count the money. Then the second thing may be they only allowed either you come to start a manufacturing business or service business. Then service business, they have a different name of the service business. For example, restaurant, they call it as service business, or some other things. So they have exactly the policy said what kind of business is okay to exist in our city.
In that particular
yes.
economic zone. Okay, and so if the business managed to pass the first hurdle, which was which would amount to 10,000 American dollars to invest, and the second hurdle, which was it was a business that fit in the basic parameters, like it wasn't ecologically creating problems or something like that, then you would be able to tell them pretty rapidly, within a week it sounds like, whether they were going to be
I need to tell them. Sometimes as soon as they tell me what they want to do, I can tell them right away. For example, and some of the business maybe will cause damage of environment issue. And Zhuhai City is very, very, very critical about the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to allow to have anything like that. For example, if you're going to have a cotton mill, for example, you're going to make fabric in that city. In the fabric, you're going to have lots dye of colors. There is no way. So I can tell this. Whoever's coming in, they go to another city. Yeah, this is not going to work.
So when you had the opportunity to interact with these business people, now I'm sure they were from many countries, not just the United States, did you get a feel for the difference in the way that people transact business in England or the US or Germany or Australia versus China? I would think that you did, yes?
At that time, most of people really were from Taiwan.
Oh, okay.
Taiwanese, lots of Taiwanese, they come as like 300 people as a huge group. So many times I had to talk to 300 people at one time.
Oh, great.
Just tell them this is our policy, and they can ask questions. Sometimes I'll hook them with which department they need to particular talking to, and I know all the leaders because that's what I do, make them, help them.
Sure.
Paid by government. All the service was free. And beside the Taiwanese, Japanese was really a big group. Germany's, we had like the beer company I worked for actually was a joint venture between Germany and China. And also, Germany, Japanese, of course, Hong Kong, Macau was a lot of people from there. There are very few people at that time is from the U.S. Were from United States.
Right, and but that's changing pretty rapidly at this time too. I want to jump ahead in time now because you then came to the U.S. Right, and I guess it was, 1996?
1996.
Came to the United States. You didn't speak English when you came to the United States.
No.
In 1996. And you moved to, of all places, Atlanta, Georgia.
I went to Chicago first. I didn't know Atlanta, Georgia. I picked, when I was in China, I did very well my job, so I get a chance to visit here. When I came here in 15 days, you cannot go over the big cities. So I picked Chicago, and I came to Chicago. Of course, didn't know one word of English. Also, I didn't know anyone. So until I got here, I realized, oh my God, everybody speaks something else but me. And I started living in Chinatown. A few months later, I got a job offer from Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
That made me so I actually bought some furniture, so I sold everything in 30 minutes in my apartment. It must be really cheap.
and moved to Atlanta.
Yeah, moved to Atlanta.
Okay.
That's how I started. I stayed in Atlanta for 11 years.
For 11 years, okay. And in Atlanta, you worked for, I think you said you worked for the Chinese Yellow Pages from the telephone companies, ad people, and I'm not being very articulate here, but you get the idea. You worked for the Chinese Yellow Pages company, and then eventually you started your own business. Okay, so you've had a flavor of what it takes to run a business in the United States. Okay, not just working with the Chinese population, but because you had a business that was in garment sewing and design, and you're a personal image consultant now and that sort of thing. So you're working with all kinds of people. So the opportunity for you to learn how we do business here in the States and to already know how things are done in China has given you a very unique perspective, I believe, in terms of what business people here in our country need to think about if they're going to be trying to do business in China. Because this is a huge population. You got, what, 1.3 billion people? And everybody's looking at that and saying, wow, there's a lot of money over there. It's a growing economy. More and more economic freedom is occurring. The growth is happening. So it makes sense for companies to investigate how they might need to do business there, right? But it seems to me that there are some hurdles that you overcame that we should think about as prospective business people going to China or Chinese coming to the United States to make sure that you are not having a cultural clash that gets in the way of business. So let's talk about that a little bit and tell me maybe some of the things that you've observed and some of the things that you think we should be aware of as we try to do business in China.
Yes, and as an immigrant, I came here, of course, language was very big challenge to me, but culture is actually bigger than language itself, because even although we don't talk, but we can still, between people and people, even although we don't talk much, we can still feel, is that person friendly? Or is that person not friendly? We can feel it. But that is the cultural part. The interesting thing is exactly the same thing to American, exactly the same behave to Chinese. Maybe Chinese thinking it's really rude, and to American, maybe they think it's very friendly. That's how that impact happens. Give you a very little example, and I pay attention for the because of the cultural difference, create business impact.
Mm-hmm.
For example, that was 425 on Monday last year, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
My girlfriend and she got divorced. Stacy got divorced, got $500,000 from her husband, the final divorce. And this woman didn't really need the money, and all she wanted just to deposit the money to a bank.
Mm-hmm.
She was driving in Atlanta. She was driving on the street, Wachovia Bank on the right side hand, Bank of America on the left side hand. Of course, it's easier to make right turn.
Mm-hmm.
She made right turn, get in Wachovia Bank. Here you go. This John guy, the bank guy, invite her come over to his office as soon as he know this woman hold $500,000 check and just want deposit. Okay, Stacy didn't know much different options.
Mm-hmm.
Just simply said, I wanted to deposit my check. Just do whatever the easiest one. John is a very decent guy, and he's really did some analyze and said, let's put in a money market account. She agreed, said, go ahead and do it. Everything went well until John asked Stacy, said, who will be the beneficiary about this money? And she said, what do you mean? She knew what he was asking, but she didn't like the question. So she just wanted to stop it. She said, what do you mean? So he said, what if in case you die, who's going to get money? That really turned her off, because to Chinese is, God, Monday morning, this week just started, you're cursing me. What the point? You think I'm going to die pretty soon?
Mm-hmm.
So she just simply said, can we just go ahead, deposit the money and not worry about that? But John was a decent guy. And he really said, don't you think you weren't thinking about anything happened to you? The government going to take the money. He was still talking, and she got up, just left.
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes later, she deposited her money across the street in Bank of America.
So,
thinking about somebody lost $500,000 business in 2 seconds. It's purely because had no idea about the culture.
Didn't understand that cultural
Yes.
difference. And that was doing business here in the U.S.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine going over and doing business in China. There's
That
a lot
would
of things and that's the interesting thing. We're in a global economy. There's a lot of global market activity that's going on, and I think that sometimes. I don't think this is unique to the Americans, but I think sometimes people will begin to think only in their own terms, only based on the frame of reference that they have, or this is the way we do it here, and this is the way we do it all the time.
Yes.
And when you start to move out into the world where there are other peoples from other cultures and other backgrounds, you can create problems without really realizing it, okay, unintentionally.
That's exactly, that's what I will say. People don't know about something they don't know. Don't know about something they don't know. From what I see, by the way, I love this country. I just love this country so much. And I actually, after I become an American citizen, I'll buy American cars, or take American airplane, or whatever. But one thing I have to be honest to say is, majority of Americans don't know one way. It's not they only way. American kind of has a certain way to do things. They expecting everything has a pattern. When you don't have a pattern, most people, some people get completely lost, don't know what to do. But if you go to China, not everything has pattern. For example, business. You get understand, China, even whatever you say, 8% a year, but they're still starting business. It's still a poor country. Maybe by the coastline, I would say this part of China may be a little bit easier when you go to start a business over there. But when you go to inland China, a lot of places, they were not prepared for the manufacturing started right away. But money is actually there, because whoever 10 years ago they start a business over there, or 5 years ago American go to business there, they're already very established. And in China, it's a large population, not much land. Thinking about if you're going to do more business, if you want to make more money, probably you want to go to inland, because they will have better tax policy than
that
here.
can be a little more advantageous.
Yeah,
for you.
absolutely, because they need you.
We're going to want to talk about this more, but we're going to wrap up this segment of the show at this point. And then we're going to have you come back again in a little bit, and we're going to pick up this conversation, because we're just getting into what I think is some real significant and interesting cultural discussions
I think
here.
the first
So
point
what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you hold that thought, okay? And I'm going to tell the folks out there that we appreciate that you're here to listen to us here at Reference Point. And thank you for being our audience, and we'll see you next time.